You okay? You look rough.
What? No, I don't. Wait a minute, I didn't even look like this last time. Something is wrong, dear viewer, and it's up to us to solve it. Join me as we uncover the mystery of... Hopefully this is better than the last gameplay. Anyway, if you've clicked on this video, you probably know what a Sonic the Hedgehog is, and if you've been a fan as long as I have, you'll know he has merchandise, and lots of it. There was a time where you'd even get tie-in toys for new games, like Jazzwares with a few games such as Unleashed, or Tommy with Forces, and now we even have Jax with Sonic's racist crosswords.
Well, I'm not doing that.
Honestly, I think it's really cool to get toys that tie in with specific games, and I'm kind of bummed we didn't get any for Frontiers and skipped straight to Superstars. I would have killed for a 4-inch Sage, or even a 2.5-inch Coco, but that's neither here nor there. I'm making today's video with a very specific purpose, to draw light upon two key games that I believe have changed the future of Sonic merch forever, bringing a renaissance of game tie-in merchandise. Here, right here, all your Sonic needs will— I want event in a minute! But before we get into that, we need to talk about children. Children today are dumb. Their brains are rotted beyond repair, and that's all thanks to everyone's favourite character, Tung 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 Tung, or whatever slot character kids like now. And you know what they say, you can't spell slot without S and L. And you know what else? Those are the initials of my favourite game. Sonic Forces. You see, it's funny, because Forces doesn't to begin with an L.
That's infinitely funnier now that you've explained the joke.
Wait a second. Infinite? Sonic Forces, the best game ever made. The goodest game released in 2017. One of the games of all time. Why do you hate Forces so much?
Because Forces killed my franchise, okay?
You know what? It doesn't matter, because I'm not talking about that version of Forces anyway. I'm talking about the companion app, released on my favourite platform. Say it with me, folks. The Amazon Fire Stick. Sonic Forces Mobile, or Sonic Forces Run Battle Game, or Sonic Forces PvP Battle Race, or as most people would call it, Sonic Forces Speed Battle, is a free game developed by the UK-based sub-studio Sega Hardlight you can get right now on your phone, Amazon Fire Stick, or even Smart Fridge. If you've ever played Sonic Dash, you've basically played Speed Battle, since it's essentially the same thing.
Ooh, that's the endless runner where you stop.
How the fuck did you get my weird pink chow liminal space thingy? Anyway, the only difference is you're racing against 3 other players in a short stage. But Mr. Collect, I hear you cry. There's no way you're about to say that this game is being used for making tie-in toys. And to that I say, you're right. You see, my intro was slightly misleading. This video isn't really about game tie-in merchandise. It's more about why I think there are select games shaping the future of all Sonic merchandise. And to finally answer the question I'm sure at least a few of you watching have thought, why the sudden influx of such obscure characters? Now, hear me out when I say this, but just because as fans we're aware of even the more deep-cut characters that got figures, such as Mephiles, Takal, and Neo Metal Sonic, the general public just doesn't, like at all. I noticed this especially when I went on a binge of Sonic Racing Crossworlds reviews for whatever strange reason my brain decided to, and noticed many reviewers were impressed by the cast including obscure characters, such as Blaze, and even the Babylon Rogues. I was a bit confused at first, as I wouldn't consider Blaze nor the Babylons obscure, but then I realised that neither get much representation at all in a lot of the modern games. Sure, Blaze appeared in Generations as a whitespace NPC and was available as a racer in Team Sonic Racing, but until recently, anyone with only a current gen console wouldn't be able to play Generations, and TSR isn't exactly that popular even amongst Sonic fans. And the Babylons hadn't been seen since Sonic Free Riders in 2010, a game released strictly on the Kinect for a sub-series that little people even cared for. If even they could be considered obscure to the general public, then what does that say about characters like the ones mentioned earlier? I believe we should briefly go over some of the more recent of Jack's new character releases, and put into perspective the last time they were seen in a mainline game. But before I go over them, I feel it should be specified that Jakks Pacific is not a collector-focused company. They make toys for children first and foremost. This isn't to say they never think about collectors, after all they have an entire line dedicated to more premium collector figures, but they also are unlikely to release figures that they don't think will sell at least somewhat well amongst younger and less die-hard fans. Now, we'll go in release order, starting all the way back in January of 2023 with the release of Chaos. Before you write a comment talking about how Chaos isn't an obscure character and that I don't know what I'm talking about, please keep in the back of your mind that I'm talking about character obscurity outside of the fandom. So yes, I'm still counting Chaos. Granted, his last mainline appearance was in Forces, but even then that was over 5 years prior, so he definitely wasn't fresh in the minds of general consumers. Then in May, they released Jet with his Extreme Gear, and this one is even more obscure since, as mentioned before, he hadn't been seen in a mainline game since 2010, and that's if you even consider the Riders game's mainline. Sure, he's just been re-released to coincide with his appearance in Crossworlds, but his original release made no sense at all. Not much later, in August, they released Infinite, a character once again not seen since Forces back in 2017, a good 6 years prior at that point. I understand that Infinite was a cool villain, but at the time Forces had released, Sonic reputation in the general public was at a near all-time low, with the failure of the Boom sub-franchise, and despite having Mania as a light of hope for the series, Forces was the game to immediately overshadow that light and plunge the series back into a dark age. What was I saying? Right. The point is, people who aren't really fans likely don't know much about Infinite other than he's a bad guy and he looks cool. So I still consider him as an obscure character. Towards the latter end of the year, we saw the release of Blaze, who I touched on earlier, but more excitingly, Mephiles. Keep in mind, at the time of this figure's release, Sonic Shadow Generations wasn't releasing for nearly an entire year, meaning his last mainline appearance was 17 years prior, in 2006 with the release of Sonic 06. To wrap up my examples, I'll mention that in early to mid 2024, we had the release of Neo Metal Sonic and Metal Sonic 3.0. Both of which being one-off appearances that hadn't been seen in years. With Metal Sonic 3.0 coming from Sonic Rivals 2, an at the time 17-year-old game released back in 2007, and Neo Metal was even longer, being from Heroes back in 2003, a whopping 21 years before the figure released. We even have Takao seemingly coming later this year, and she hasn't been seen since Adventure back in 1998. So just to recap, Jakks is not a company that focuses their main release figures, which are their 4 and 2.5 inch lines, on collectors. Their primary demographic is kids. But if this is the case, then why are there so many figures of characters that kids have probably never seen? After all, a lot of these games aren't accessible on current gen consoles, and not every kid will have a PC, let alone know how to emulate anything. I highly doubt there are many kids seeking out Sonic Rivals 2 these days, but they will, however, play Sonic mobile games, specifically Forces. However, there is one game I've neglected to mention so far, the game that initially sparked this entire theory, a game from my own personal dark age, and that game is Sonic Speed Simulator. Just in case you haven't heard of or played Sonic Speed Simulator, let me explain what the game is. From Wikipedia, Sonic Speed Simulator is a massively multiplayer online incremental platform game developed and published by GameFam, under license and in association with Sega of America, and serves as an official entry in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise on the gaming and game development platform Roblox. The gameplay involves moving around and collecting Chaos Orbs, and I think you get the idea. The game has had a few controversies around it, and I'm not here to defend the game. I think the game is ridiculously microtransaction heavy and relies on gambling tactics in a game for kids. And even I've fallen victim to the gambling trap. There have also been reports of staff mistreatment by GameFam, the studio behind the game. However, I'm not educated enough on this front to make any claims, and it's also not the reason I mention it. My point is, like Forces, this game has a lot of skins, and as it's a Roblox game, it is very popular with children. So, now that I've explained what I consider the two main games allowing us to get these obscure characters, we can move on. I'm sure you've all noticed the whiteboard behind me, and that's here for a reason. What we're going to do is go character by character, with every character I mentioned prior, and mark which of the two games they appear in as playable characters. Now, maybe you've noticed there are two characters I haven't yet mentioned, but we'll see where they appear first, and then get on to them later. I assure you, there is a reason for them. Starting at the top, we have Chaos, who isn't present in Speed Sim, but is playable in Forces. And then there's Jet, who is playable in both games. Infinite's up next, who is a temporary boss in Speed Sim, and a playable character in Forces. Blaze is, like Jet, playable in both. Mephiles has never appeared in Speed Sim, but is playable in Forces. Metal 3.0 is also a playable character in both games. Neo Metal is a permanent boss in Speed Sim and playable in Forces. Tikal is yet to make an appearance in Speed Sim, but is indeed playable in Forces. And then there are the two characters I said we'd get back to, Werehog and Grindshoe Sonic. And there is a reason for me to be including both of them here, despite them both appearing recently in the Mainline series, if you count Crossworlds as Mainline anyway. Just to note, Grindshoe Sonic is only present in Speed Sim, but Werehog is present in both. In case you didn't know, Grindshoe Sonic appeared as a DLC option in Frontiers, and Werehog was very recently a pre-order bonus for Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Both of these also appeared as figures earlier this year. In the US, the Sonic Forms free pack that also included a Supersonic figure, and in the UK individually. Don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily saying that Forces or Speed Sim were the main reason for these figures to be made. They could have easily have been made to capitalise on Crossworlds for the Werehog and Frontiers for Grindshoe Sonic, except I honestly think that's relatively unlikely. The Werehog correlation I can see, as the pack and game both released this year. However, I feel it should be mentioned that the free pack he came in has seemingly, as of about the end of September, started to leave its production cycle, meaning it will become very hard to find. And while the figure and Crossworlds both released this year as I mentioned, I think the fact it's leaving its life cycle just as the game is releasing gives my point some more validity. Even if you ignore this, Grindshoe Sonic makes very little sense. The shoes were last seen as an optional newsletter bonus in Frontiers, a 3-year-old game, but had a completely different name, the Sonic Adventure 2 shoes. And before then, they were in Forces, the console version, not the app, as the High Speed shoes. The first time these shoes appeared in a game under the name Grindshoes was in Sonic Speed Simulator in 2023, and then later in Rumble, although they had been called the Grindshoes in Sonic X many years prior. Werehog is an interesting case too, since until his release in the mobile games and Speed Sim, he had always been called Sonic the Werehog, and never just Werehog. But it seems that ever since, Werehog is the name that's stuck, as it's even what he's called in Crossworlds. This, to me at least, is concrete proof that the mobile games at least have some impact on the merchandise being produced, with solidifying names for characters and maybe even kickstarted the return of tie-in products. If that still isn't enough proof, there is another company making merchandise of some of these characters, and that is Funko. Now, granted, Funko is not an owner of the Master Toy license from Sega, so they likely get a bit more leeway with releasing more obscure stuff, but they also have releases of Grindshoe Sonic, Neo Metal Sonic, Blaze, Jet, and now even Chaos and Metal Sonic 3.0, albeit as limited releases. While this might not make my point any more valid, I think there are a few products by Funko that can only be explained by my theory, and those are their Treasure Hunter Knuckles and Buccaneer Shadow merch. Treasure Hunter Knuckles is a character that appeared in Sonic Forces, Dash and Speed Simulator, and has never been seen in a mainline game. However, Funko has made a pop and a mystery mini of him, and Buccaneer Shadow, despite having a different name, is Captain Shadow, who features in Dash and Speed Sim. If there wasn't at least a slight focus on the mobile games for merchandise, this wouldn't make sense. After all, why make merchandise for outfits that have never been seen in a mainline game? Granted, Funko is definitely more collector-oriented than Jakks, but I still think it's more than just a mere coincidence that they have a lot of releases of the same characters that are prominently featured in the mobile games, and a focus from Funko on releasing skins that don't get any mainline representation. Not to mention, not even all Sonic fans even play the mobile games, so if even Funko is making them, it's a clear focus on the younger audiences who do. I'm going to stray slightly from the mobile games and talk about how in general Jakks has gotten better at tie-in products for the games. Trust me, I have a reason. In recent times, we've started to get a lot of game-specific items, with an entire line of Superstar stuff, albeit a bit late, considering the game is already 2 years old. Man, we are all getting old. Anyway, just last year we got Collector's Shadow with Doom Wings for Sonic Shadow Generations, and just recently we've begun to get some Crossworlds toys. While it's small steps, at least we're getting stuff for the mainline games. Hopefully the next game features Sage prominently, so we can finally get her as a figure. I should get back on track. What was next? Uh-oh, I'm about to share my most unpopular opinion of the video, so if you don't like opinions that aren't of the popular variety, why have you even watched this far? Okay everyone, here we go. Brace yourselves. The reason we're getting Tangle and Whisper is because of these games. Now I know that sounds absurd, after all the packaging itself says they come from the comic collection, but I think Forces Mobile was genuinely a factor in the release, specifically for Japanese fans. If you didn't know, Japan doesn't get the comics regularly and only get them translated in batches. In fact, across 5 years, they've only gotten up to issue 32, which yes, is far enough to have met both Tangle and Whisper, but even with their release, they're still not all that popular, so most exposure to these characters, if any at all, probably comes from the few amount of side games that they feature in. And although they haven't had any mainline appearances yet, other than offhanded mentions, hopefully the side games and merchandise I've mentioned can rejuvenate an interest in the IDW comics for those overseas, and allow them to finally make the appearance we're all waiting for. But hey, maybe I am just a crazy conspiracy theorist, and nothing I've said has made any sense. Even if the majority of you refuse to believe my ramblings, I hope at least one of you can hear me out, because I truly believe that these games were at the very least the first steps towards a full return to mainline game representation in merchandise. Whether you agree or disagree, please do let me know what you think below. Maybe you convince me that I actually am crazy and that everything is one big coincidence, but good luck with that one. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like below and subscribe with the notification bell on to be informed when I upload and stay updated on all things Sonic merch. I may not upload a lot, but a lot of work goes into these videos and I appreciate each and every one of you. I actually just want to thank everyone who stuck with the channel. It's already been an entire year. I know, I found it hard to believe I'd been doing this for a year too. And whether you've been here since my first video or my most recent, each and every one of you is cherished by me. Oh right, I forgot about the mystery I set up at the beginning. Yeah, turns out I just wanted to rewrite this video.